What is up, everybody? This is Lyle, No Hippie Trucking and Transportation. I'm coming at you from the Loves in Ontario, Oregon, I-84, exit 374. And I am coming at you today with an afro looking like I need to paint a happy little tree up against this mountain landscape like I'm Bob Ross. You youngins might not know nothing about Bob Ross, but Google it. I'm sure you will know who I'm talking about. But I'm not quite there yet, but I'm going to get there here pretty soon. I've had a couple people ask some questions. How do you be successful at Prime? Like, I'm supposed to know all the answers or something. How can I be successful at Prime? And then I've had a couple people ask, is now the time that I should order my lease purchase truck? So I'm going to get into both of those today on this. Before I get to that, man, I have been running and gunning by Prime standards. You know what I mean? When I picked up this load in Johnstown, let me see where this was. Picked it up in Johnson, Arkansas. So basically Fayetteville, Arkansas, going to Centralia, Washington. I looked at it and I was like, you know what, this isn't a tight load, but it's a tight load the way I want to run it. So my objective on this was to get out to a truck stop. There's one 10 miles away from the shipper, or receiver, excuse me. Shut down, get a 10, and then deliver with the full clock so I could either deadhead out of here, which I've been hearing people have been doing, which I will do, without all the whining, or be primed to pick up a load with a full clock. So that was my objective. I knew I couldn't get there going 58 miles an hour or even 60 miles an hour. I had to kind of max it out. A little bit of wiggle room in there, but not a lot. And that's going to kind of, you know, everything's not just cut and dry. You know, you have some people, I just drive 58 miles an hour, and it doesn't matter what the situation is. Sometimes you have to tailor your driving to what is going on with your load. So I normally wouldn't just run all out 65 miles an hour, but in this case, I had an objective, wanted to get there. So these last couple days, what I've done is, or last 3 days, you know, I've ran 534 miles, and I had to stop a little bit shorter than I normally would because I was working with my 14-hour clock. That's when I picked up the load. Next day was 658 miles. I ran 10 hours and 29 minutes on that one. And today I did 654 miles and I ran 10 hours and 35 minutes on that. I currently have 2 hours and 35 minutes on my clock, with 7 hours and 8 minutes coming back at midnight, which would be 10 o'clock out here. So I should be able to get to my truck stop that I'm trying to stop at with about an hour left on my clock, but I get back 6 hours and 29 minutes at midnight, so I'll be kind of good from there. And then my recaps should be killing it after that. Well, not really killing it, but killing it enough to get some loads. But all right, so let's talk about this. You know, first of all, I am not the authority on any of this stuff. There's people at Prime doing better than me, that people at Prime doing worse than me. I just happen to be somebody that kind of puts a little bit out there. But the first thing I want to tackle is, should you order a lease purchase truck? And I've been thinking about this because I've been thinking about it from my own standpoint. And what I keep reflecting back to is business classes and business mindset classes that I went through when I was in the mortgage business. And the thing that keeps coming back to me that was always said is, if you're going through a lull, there's going to be a lot of people that are cutting things, whether that's people or, you know, whatever it is. If you're positioned right, now's the time to invest in your company when things are down. And it depends on the business. It could be equipment, it could be training, it could be whatever. But now's the time to do it, because inevitably, when things turn around, you're going to be positioned best to take advantage of that. So, if I could order a truck right now, which I can't because you can only have one order in per year, I would probably order it now. And the reason is I want to position myself well so when the market turns, I'll be good to go. Now, I may not be adding any drivers, but I would have that other truck around, and then I would figure out what to do with the older of the trucks at that point. So my advice to anybody, and it depends on where you're at. If you're not stable, then I would say not do it. But if you're stable, if you're going to be making a payment anyway, you might as well be making it to pay down something. So in my instance, with the market being down, like I'd said, time to invest. So now is the time to invest in, on my end, it might be maintenance. It could be any big ticket items that could offset my taxes right now to where I'm not going to have any expenses coming out on that second quarter. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I personally would go ahead and do it. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and I thought about this one a lot because I talk to people, and a lot of people do things a lot different than me. And the more people I talk to and the longer I've been in it, I realize that there's no one size fits all to this. There have been things that I say, and I believe them because they work for me. Run out your clock. Don't worry about, what's going to happen down the road. Don't take any breaks in the middle of a load. Some of these things I still stand by, but other people are successful doing it a different way. So one of the examples, one of the guys that I talk to, Rusty, if you're watching this, every time I see him, he's at a different restaurant, he's doing all this kind of stuff, and he's more of a trainer, but he does take time out to smell the roses, if you would say. Now, personally, I couldn't do that. I need to stay in a business mode when I'm out here. To me, I look at that kind of almost like slacking. But then when I think about it, people that are doing that and taking these little like mini breaks, maybe they're able to stay out here a little bit longer because they're able to kind of take these little rejuvenation periods. So I may be wrong about that. I might be wrong about the whole, personally, I don't maybe think I'm wrong about the one. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with driving 58. But if you're driving 58 miles an hour and driving 8.5 hours a day, I can't see how that works. But maybe there's somebody out there that's working for. One thing I definitely want to talk about is I'm never one to get caught up in the minutia, okay? I'm not breaking down my cents per mile and costs and all this kind of stuff and how much this is costing and how much that's costing. And that works for me, but there are other people. I remember I was talking to Ross Johnson. What's the name of his channel? Anyway, Johnson's Logic. He is capable of breaking all that stuff down, how much you're making per mile, all this different kind of stuff, and that works for him. If you were to ask him to run like me and be successful, he would not be able to do it because he would feel maybe a little lack of control or something like that. And if you were to ask me to run like him, I wouldn't be able to do it because I'd be overwhelmed with the details. So I think that one of the things that I'm learning is that there's a ton of different ways to do this business and do well at it. It's you taking your strengths and applying them to this business. So to me, my strengths are I'm just going to be grinding. And I can see that, I'm not I can see that in people that are successful out here. Myra comes to mind. the first driver that I had, we're just kind of just point and shoot. And we don't really overthink it. We're not really lollygagging, doing any of that kind of stuff. And that's how we do it. But there's a lot of people that are successful that think a little bit deeper in the entire process. There's people out there that are successful that maybe are stopping and smelling the roses a little bit more, things like that. So I think the main thing I'm trying to get across in this video is everybody has unique stuff to them. Some people, and here's a good example, some people could look at an ACE 2 class at Prime and say, that's some valuable information to me. And to me, I look at it and say, that's a little bit too much information for me to really be worried about. As long as I'm doing all right, I'm not going to worry about it. I know the areas that I can focus on. I don't need to know the detail about it. So that is my way of answering a question without answering a question. There's a ton of different ways to do this. It's just finding a way that works with your mentality. Because I can absolutely guarantee you that if somebody said, Lyle, you have to track how many cents per mile every load is, what your fuel cost is on every load, what's your app. Because there's people that break this shit that, like, there's people that I know that I could say, I'm in Washington. What's the average load or deadhead coming out of here? Somebody can go to a spreadsheet and tell me every load they took out of what area in Washington, how many miles they have the deadhead, if they have the deadhead, and what the load was coming out and where it went. I can't get into all that. That bogs me down. But one thing I will say that I have seen a difference, or I can put my finger on, between the people who are successful and unsuccessful, are the unsuccessful people hang around with unsuccessful people, and the successful people hang around with successful people. And that could be Facebook, in person, whatever. And a lot of times if I'm talking to somebody and it starts going down that negative route, I will end that conversation, or I'll kind of, there's going to be a reason why that conversation is not going to go on. Because I am a believer that shit can rub off on me. So that is about it. Hopefully that made some sense. But, and one more addition I want to put on this is, when I'm saying I don't get caught up in the minutia and all that kind of stuff, and I say, what, I don't turn down loads because of money, and I don't. I never have. I have not encouraged the two drivers that drive for me to either take a load or don't take a load because of what it paid or didn't pay. It's whatever they think works for them, because it all averages out. That's the way I look at it. And other people may not look at it, and they may be successful doing it how they do it. I don't focus on the money per load because that doesn't give me as much satisfaction as being in areas I like. So I talk to people all the time, and they say, if it pays enough, I'll go to the moon. Whatever. What? It doesn't matter what it pays. I'm not really trying to go to certain places. And one of the reasons that I don't do it is, in the long run, if I'm not in a good mind space because of where like East Coast, Northeast puts me in a bad mind space. I could make, and to be honest with you, loads coming out of the East Coast right now are not paying all that well anyway. So if anybody's out there in the East Coast, it's not like you're even making no more money to go up there. Because, I mean, I'm looking at a load right now. I think it's going from somewhere in the East Coast to Edwardsville, Illinois. That load pays like shit. So, but it doesn't matter what it pays. Because if I get a load going to the East Coast, it could pay all the money, but my mind is going to be all fucked up. Or I'm going to be in a different mood. My attitude's going to be a little bit off. And in the long run, it could be costing me at least motivation just doing that. Whereas some people, hell, I'll go downtown Manhattan for enough money, and then that money makes them happy enough to keep them rejuvenated. To me, going in the Northeast just drains me. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like we're coming up on 4 months out here. I'm not no real truck driver that's built to survive 4 months out on the road. I mean, we're like at 3.5 months right now, almost. I'm not that guy built like that. And one of the reasons I think I've been able to do it is because I haven't been fucking with the Northeast that much. Other than my first load out of home. Either my first or second load out of home went out there. And then maybe I stuck around out there. I don't remember. But anyway, use your strengths. If you're good at math, figure out a way to make math work in trucking. If you're highly motivated, work ethic type thing, figure out how to make that work. If you're lazy, figure out how to make that work. But there's a ton of different ways to be successful out here. Hope that answered some questions. Main question I really want to get to is, or main thing I want to get to is, in a down market, if you can survive it, invest in your business in down markets. I'm out.